Welcome to Farm Connections. I'm Dan Hoffman. Today we are attending the Riverland Community College Ag Summit. We'll be talking to experts engaged in leveraging ag innovations for global good. There are so many new advances in the world of agriculture. Come along as we explore what Southern Minnesota ag leaders are talking about today on Farm Connections.
Welcome to Farm Connections with your host, Dan Hoffman.
Farm Connections, sponsored by Alcorn Clean Fuel, a farmer-owned cooperative in Claremont, Minnesota, produces ethanol, high-protein livestock feed, and corn oil, and beverage-grade carbon dioxide for resale to benefit its members and their communities. Absolute Energy, a locally owned facility, produces 115 million gallons of ethanol annually, proudly supporting local economies in Iowa and Minnesota. Absolute Energy, adding value to the neighborhood. The Agricultural Utilization Research Institute, collaborating with businesses and entrepreneurs to foster long-term economic benefit for Minnesota through value-added agricultural products. You can learn more at ari.org. Kahn Tile Supply, Leroy, Minnesota, and New Hampton, Iowa, since 1985, supplying the market with field drain tile products, dual wall, metal culverts, septic systems, PVC, and plumbing supplies.
We're on site in Austin, Minnesota at the Hormel Institute for a very exciting event, leveraging agricultural innovations for global good. And with us to tell us about that summit and some of the exciting things happening at Riverland Community College are the president for Riverland Community College, Dr. Ella Wooligan. What's happening here?
Oh, exciting things happening today. We're running our third annual Ag Summit. It's a summit to really focus on how we in Southeast Minnesota can play a part in really impacting the global nature of food, agriculture, and biological systems. What we mean by that is we have the land. We have the agricultural land that's not going anywhere. It's a great resource. And we can retain farmland and grow farm wealth through added value, both to the production of agriculture and the talent that would take part in production of agriculture and food for the future. Millennials, they really have a role in helping us set the path. And today is a day where we believe that together with entrepreneurs in the area, with business owners, with local producers, with educators, we could even move a vision that we started 3 years ago forward and enlarge it to really leverage agricultural innovation for the global good.
What do you see as a vision going forward?
One thing that we really know is that the future of our agriculture and food industry lies on maybe the younger generation. And this younger generation are very involved in what can happen. How can they make an impact, both locally and outside? So we also know that we have to have local startup businesses, entrepreneurs in our region that will make sure that we can not only do what's necessary in our community, but be sustainable, not now alone, but in the future. So we also depend on people like the Hormel Foundation. We depend on the local legislators that we hope will help us as we build not only the program and the curriculum, but a structure that we call the Interactive Education Center.
Well, thank you for that. If your vision is accomplished, which it will be, what will it look like?
Well, that's a really interesting question. If it's achieved, this will be a global destination for training in agriculture, food science, and biotechnology at the 2 years level. And this is what I mean. For instance, those students that have the interest to go further, to pursue a bachelor's degree or master's degree, they can spend the first 2 years at Riverland Community College and get their program transferred to the 4 years. And those that want to do a 2-year or shorter certificate or program and go into the workforce or immediately, we'll be able to train them. Not only that, we'll be able to help local entrepreneurs to start their own businesses and try them, test them at our center, more like a prototype for those who want to really innovate and stay in our community.
Dr. Yadawilligan, thank you for your leadership and also good luck.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much, Dan. In Riverland's 2013 strategic plan, the Blueprint for Excellence, we identified agriculture as a top priority over the years ahead, and we identified Austin campus as the anchor site for the programs that will serve students across the region. According to a 2013 study funded by USDA's National Institute of Food and Agriculture, NIFA, an average of 57,900 jobs will open every year from 2015 to 2020. And they require a bachelor's degree or higher in food, agriculture, natural resources, or environmental studies. These jobs would include a range of sectors, including management and business, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, food and biomaterials production, and education, communication, government services. Strikingly, it is also expected that 39% of those positions will go unfilled. 39%. So we want to be ahead of the pack to make sure that we end up being a global destination for the training of future workers, talent that would make sure that we retain farmland in southeast Minnesota and we grow wealth in our region and impact the rest of the world as much as we can. Again, I want to thank you very much for coming and wish you a wonderful time at this summit.
I'm with Teresa Spaeth, and we just finished watching her moderate a panel of innovators. What happened up there anyway?
Dan, thank you. Wow, what an exciting conversation. I thought it was great to have true businessmen up there in front talking about how do you make things happen in ag innovation. It was a great conversation.
Well, from your perspective, what did they say?
They said being connected was the most important thing you could be. They talked a lot about lifelong learning and the importance of not only being connected in a community, but listening to both sides of a story and discerning information and deciding, is this fact or is this fiction? And how do I take those ideas and advance it into the next ag innovation? Were key components of that conversation.
Well, innovation isn't new to you. I know you're with the Conservation Corps at this time, but before you were with AURI. What about what about innovation in that realm?
In the world of agriculture and water and conservation, it's all about innovation. I was just talking to a group of FFA students about agribusiness. And so many times we look at things like the Porter Five Forces model of competition and differentiation. When you're dealing with commodities and natural resources, it's hard to differentiate a product, and the only way to create new value and new opportunity is to innovate.
We had one of the speakers talk about vision in terms of JFK saying, we're going to be on the moon, and then all the things that followed. And I think he said 6,300 innovations to get us to that step. Can you maybe comment on that?
Absolutely. It is going to take that and more to get to that step. It's going to be a daunting task to feed the nation and then to feed the world. And one thing that surprised me when I was executive director at AURI, we incorporated an ag bioscience study to look at what's the new opportunities for Minnesota in food and agriculture. And we kind of perceived we'd worked on ethanol, and then there's biodiesel and bio-based materials. And then we engaged this organization called Battelle Hormel Institute to help us analyze what that would be. And we were shocked when they came back and said, oh, well, because of the way Minnesota is structured and the people and the culture and the knowledge that we have here, you folks could innovate and feed the world. That was a very shocking thing to learn. Change the world by feeding it. And we have all those components right here in Minnesota.
Well, there's been a lot of talk about using youth to move things forward. Thoughts on that?
Oh gosh, the Conservation Corps has 600 plus youth between the ages of 15 and 25, and they never cease to amaze me. Their ingenuity, they don't know they can't. And so they're willing to try. And that's really, isn't that the core value of agriculture? We try and we make it happen. And when those youth get out there and they want to make a difference, they love the world, and they think about things not just about how do you make that happen, how do you grow that, but how do we tell the story and how do we communicate that and share it with others. It's just phenomenal what they're capable of doing.
Well, this conference is about leveraging, and certainly the youth have leveraged technology and communications and all things new, right?
Yes, and one thing that was very surprising, I thought, today about the panel is how all three of them talked about the importance of social media in a different way, and how youth are very prolific at using social media. Not just about posting ideas on Facebook, but also about how identifying the cool things and how we have to move agriculture and ag innovation from just a topic of conversation to being the cool thing that we need to do. And how do we leverage that through social media so that we inspire others to share in that opportunity.
Well, thanks for joining us, Teresa. Very informative.
Thank you so much for having me.
Stay tuned for more Farm Connections. We just finished listening to the innovation panel at the Ag Summit in Austin, Minnesota, and with me is Dan Michig.
Hi.
Well, welcome, Dan.
Thank you.
Really some great comments on innovation, and what's been your story with that?
Well, my story is I'm a third-generation manufacturer, and bringing manufacturing into the agriculture, I've had a lot of exposure with different polymers and petroleum-based plastics, and we're using actually plant-based plastics now, which is really different compared to the industry that I've been in.
How is it different?
Well, we're not drilling for oil, so we're actually using a renewable source, using products made from corn. We can use switchgrass, sugar beets, things like that, but it processes differently than traditional petroleum products.
Well, you have something in your hand. What is that?
This is a garden pot, but it's not just any garden pot. What this is actually is made from plants, but there's plant food already in here. So you can actually peel the tabs so the roots don't get bound up in there. You plant the entire pot and it breaks down. As it breaks down throughout the growing season, it also feeds the roots. So we're seeing faster growth and more fruits and vegetables per plant. But what we've seen is there's 4 billion petroleum pots sold each year with plants in them, and only 2% get recycled. So we're putting 200 million pounds of petroleum pots in a landfill each year. So this really avoids landfills. It avoids drilling for oil. It also limits like fertilizer running into the waterways. And also we're seeing more fruit based on Iowa State test today, so we're producing more food.
So how long in the soil before this breaks down into something that doesn't represent looking like a plant?
Right,
Or
a pot. Well, it's hard to tell because it's a new product, and so each soil is so different from being really moist or really, is it sandy, is it clay? We have great images at 17 and a half weeks what it looks like, but we're seeing throughout the growing season, and whatever's left, it's almost like an eggshell, so you can just kind of peel it and put it in the compost, or you can go ahead and till it up for nutrients for next year. Most people are just tilling it up as nutrients for next growing season.
Well, agriculturists must really enjoy visiting with you.
It's definitely different. Coming from the manufacturing side, I think I'm learning more from them than they're learning from me.
Good luck in your projects and keep innovating.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. Stay tuned for more Farm Connections. We're still at the Ag Summit at the Hormel Institute in Austin, Minnesota, and wandering through the crowd, I noticed a few people in blue jackets, our wonderful FFA students. And here to tell us about why she's here is Christine Scheckinger.
I'm here because I want to learn the many technologies that are bringing back to the farms, and the just many new innovations that they're bringing, and just learning a whole lot that I can to bring back into the classroom.
Well, you mentioned innovation. Tell us more about innovation. What is that and what does it mean to you, Christine?
These innovations, one of the biggest things that they have innovated is the use of drones on the farms, like in the fields. So I just kind of like want to learn about the technologies that they're using, and see how they're using it and how it creates a better outcome for the farmer.
Do you live on a farm?
I live on a hobby farm, and I raise sheep, market sheep, breeding sheep, and I have llamas.
So when you're done with high school, you're a junior at the Austin Public Schools at this time, right?
Yes, I am.
When you're done with that curriculum and that program, what's next?
I'm planning on going to South Dakota State University and majoring in either agriculture education or animal science, kind of deciding between the both.
Maybe a double major?
Maybe. I haven't quite decided yet, but hopefully.
Well, Christine, they flashed the light, so it must mean it's time to go back to the theater for the rest of the program. Thanks for joining us.
Yep, thank you.
Stay with us for more Farm Connections. There are many special and unique things happening in agriculture, and with us to tell us about that is Katie Myrie. Welcome, Katie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Katie, tell us a little bit about some of the things you've done that talk about innovation and entrepreneurship.
Back about a year and a half ago, I realized that I wanted to be a farmer. I wanted to raise pigs and I wanted to have my own farm. But in talking to farmers, I realized how difficult it is to reach markets, how difficult it is to run a small-scale, sustainable farm. So taking a few steps back, I looked at how to create a better system for the farmers that I know and love and want to be. So that system is connecting farmers with wholesale outlets, which specifically with RED. RED stands for Restaurants Eat Direct, and we connect farmers directly with chefs in order to supplement their current sales outlets.
You know, it sounds really simple when you talk about it, but in reality, it's quite complex. Agriculturists, farmers finding the marketplace.
Definitely. I think it's so much of it is just a time thing. Farmers are spending 15 hours a day growing. They're out in the fields, and on the other side, buyers are spending the chefs that we work with. They're spending so much time running their restaurants, running their kitchens, and they're both very hands-on, time-intensive operations. And so, any way that we can create a system that can allow them to reach more of each other. So the farmers to reach more chefs and the chefs to buy from more farmers. That's what we want to do, and we want to make it easy for them to support each other.
Can you tell me about freshness and distance from market to the table?
What it actually is more than just the distance it takes from farm to plate. It's about the process of growing it. And these small-scale, diversified family farms, they're growing things with soil health in mind. They're growing products with a longer timeline from seed to harvest, rather than opting for fertilizers to accelerate the process of growing and whatnot. So what you have is a better product that tastes better and it tastes different from these small farms, and that's why we work with a lot of chefs, because they recognize that too, and they can give that product to their customers and essentially teach the restaurant goer what the difference is between non-local and local. And I think that's the exciting part about local food systems, is that it just tastes amazing, and it's a whole new adventure for us to take at the dinner table.
Katie, what are the greatest challenges you've come up against?
I think one way to answer that question would be the margins that we work with small-scale agriculture and produce. My business is contingent on a lot of produce being sold rather than making a lot of money off of that produce. So I think it's been really difficult to find a model that fits small-scale agriculture and allows them the access they need to the markets that they need to grow their farms. I think another challenge is just finding the right mentors. I think I've been really lucky to find the right people who are very bought into this mission, but there's so much work going on in agriculture right now that there's work going in all these different directions, and I think the challenge that we have right now is to really put our heads together and figure out what we want to create in a system all on the same page. And I think that there's some value in different opinions and different conversations around that, but I think we need to really get our heads together and have those tough conversations and disagree and find ways to move forward together, rather than, like we keep talking about in the panel, doing siloed work, really figuring out how to put people together and put ideas together that can be synergistic.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
There's more on the Ag Summit. Well, agriculture is a worldwide business, and we've heard a lot today about the globalization of agriculture, innovation, and entrepreneurship. With us to help us carry that message a little further is Dr. Jerry Nelson, Professor Emeritus from the University of Missouri. Dr. Nelson, welcome.
Good to be here. It's been a pleasure.
Well, you have local roots here. Tell us about that.
Well, I have local roots, right. I graduated from Lyle High School, and I went to Austin Junior College back when I was upstairs in high school. That's quite a while ago, but got a great foundation.
You know, it talks about change and evolution. You started in the upstairs of a building, and now we have an entire campus. What's needed to move agriculture forward in an agricultural sense?
Well, there's a lot of things relative to technologies, and the idea that we can advance yield and then eventually quality and other factors that are associated with agricultural issues. My background was primarily in animal science to begin with, and then I shifted to plant science. But the two combined to provide a healthy diet for American citizens, and now we have the agricultural technology to produce it.
Well, we're right here at the Hormel Institute, and that fits in right with their message and their mission. You spent some time at the University of Minnesota on the animal science side and then also plant science, and then later you got your PhD. Tell us about that experience.
Well, it was a different experience after leaving the University of Minnesota because I shifted to the University of Wisconsin, but shifted to plant physiology and biochemistry to understand the more basic components that go into the plant and animal in terms of its production. It was a revelation to get at more basic levels and to try to translate that back out to the practical component, but it was a fun experience.
Well, you moderated a panel today, and there was a lot of talk about globalization. What was your takeaway from the panel and all the experts that spoke?
Well, there are a lot of messages that came out. The focus of the panel was really on 2 points. One is the sustainability of agriculture, not only in the U.S., but around the world. And that sustainability means more than just the production at the farm gate, because the products leave the farm gate and they must be in a sustainable environment and retained in a sustainable way all the way to the plate when the consumer eats it. And one of the issues is then how much waste occurs and how is the carbon footprint in some things. The second component we spent quite a bit of time on was climate change and what is happening in the international world where everyone shares the same climate, or at least the air, and yet certain countries are more effective in removing the greenhouse gases or producing the greenhouse gases. So it's an international issue no matter how we look at it.
Dr. Nelson, what's at stake if we don't get the agriculture and the climate thing right?
Well, there's some real changes that are going to occur in agriculture if the climate change continues to occur. And it looks to me anyway, and a lot of other people, that it's going to be very hard to stop it. We can slow it up, but there's going to be a transition. And for example, I used in the talk that if things continue and we can only reduce the output of greenhouse gases, Austin very likely will have a climate similar to Kansas City within about 40 years, which means it's going to be a longer growing season, it's going to be higher temperatures, and it's going to obviously change the way that the cropping systems and the animal production are affected.
It changes a lot of things. Well, this is all about talent and putting the right people in the right place. What do we need to do to feed the world?
Well, that's a good question, because when we start thinking about feeding the world, we have to do it in a sustainable way. In other words, we have to meet the needs not only of the people, but we have to preserve the environment, and we have to do it in a socially acceptable way. The unfortunate part is that as we go around the world, there's a big difference in incomes and standards of living, and so the sustainability parameters are different. For example, in the U.S. or Europe, we've put a lot more emphasis on the social aspects. In other words, the things that are affecting society like food safety and food health, in contrast to some of the developing countries where it'd be more environmental issues, and then particularly just pure food production in some of the very low income countries. So the priorities and the configuration of what sustainability is differs with income levels among the countries.
Well, after traveling to several international sites myself, the social issue, the social discussion is totally different when you're hungry and your food is hand to mouth.
You're absolutely right. My trips, when I go to North Korea, for example, they say we should do something about the environment. We said we can't. We have to feed the people. We have to wait and we'll do something with the environment later. But gradually you go into higher developed countries like Vietnam, and they're already dealing with the environment and doing a pretty good job. But now the social pressures are coming. They want the food to be safe, they want it to be healthy, they want it to be fresh, they want it to be high quality, and that puts a whole new dimension on what we're thinking about in terms of the agricultural production.
Well, some of these trends are predictable because we've seen it in other industries. The textile industry transformed in a certain way. We're seeing the same trends now. What's your advice to anybody making policy regarding climate and more specifically agriculture?
Well, that's a tough question to answer in a very specific way, because the climate is affected all over the world, but each country is contributing differently to that climate. But for example, in Vietnam, their main concern is a lot of their major grain producing area is only about a meter or say 3 feet above sea level. And when the the polar ice caps are melting, the sea is going up, and they're backing water up, salt water, into the rivers that they can't flow out. So it's a real issue, and yet they don't contribute very much to the problem. On the other hand, China contributes a great deal to the high amounts of greenhouse gases, and they're trying to ameliorate some things in a different way. And so there's this continuity among countries in how they're dealing with it. Now, they've been trying to do some things on an international basis, and they get some agreement. But still, it's countries like the U.S., which is highly industrialized, Europe, and then China coming along to the major contributors. And if they don't comply, then the whole world is going to suffer. So it's a big issue, and we have to deal with it internationally.
Tug and pull each direction, right?
Yes, exactly.
Well, thank you, Dr. Nelson. Appreciate your comments and your time with us today.
It's always a pleasure to visit, and I really enjoy my interactions with Riverland and the Hormel Institute and other places. But Riverland is where I started in Austin Junior College, and it's still near and dear to the heart. It's a major part of this community, and its values in terms of the education and the cultural components that cannot be estimated accurately.
Wonderful testimony. Thank you, Dr. Nelson. Thanks for joining us at the Hormel Institute, host of the Riverland Community College Ag Summit. The breadth and depth of new ideas percolating through the ag industry is encouraging and inspiring. Our region is home to talented, innovative people who are making a difference for the global good. I'm Dan Hoffman. See you next time on Farm Connections.